Afternoon, everyone. I'm not going to tell you what that private joke was. It was so funny that if I told you, you would just have to cancel your pension. All right. But if you want to know what that joke is, hold on. After this break, we might tell you.
I need to get going, Mel. I'll see you later.
Hello, everybody. I am joined today by Shane.
Hi.
Shane, David, please introduce yourself fully to the wonderful audience who are watching today. Shane, let's start with you.
Yeah. How you doing? You say Dave. I'll turn it up.
Yeah, and David, where are you both coming from today?
I'm coming from County Kerry in Ireland.
Oh, what lovely, hey?
Yeah.
It looks like the weather's absolutely beautiful there again today.
It is. The sun is shining.
Oh, as it is here in the southwest of England. And Shane, are you just up the road or?
No, I'm in the Midlands on a farm, a working dairy farm. So you might hear some tractors and stuff moving around. We just have to work with that, though.
Oh, wonderful. Do you actually run part of the farm or?
No, I just rent. We just rent here.
Oh, so you just see it all happening around you. Do you get free milk? That's
you can actually. Yeah, if you're stuck, you can just go down. He's very nice guy, actually, very nice farmer.
Yeah. Well, he just lets you milk the cow.
Probably would. But a lot of people from Dublin used to go down to Wexford for holidays. So when I was around 10 or 12, spent a lot of summers down in Wexford. So moving in here, got the smell of the farm and all that brings it back. So every now and again, I get a little kickback from that, you know?
Yeah. Well, now, guys, I mean, you were both in bands in the 80s, Blue in Heaven, Into Paradise, etc. And we'll come to that point, but we need to go back further in time for both of you. Where did music both start for both of you?
Well, who'll go first? Will I go first?
Yeah, Shane will.
Maybe it goes back to being 10, Slade, maybe AC/DC, Rock Goes to College. There was a show on when I was about 14. Then I forgot about it. And then maybe punk came in. And then Dave had a proper acoustic guitar. I had a nylon string guitar. Literally couldn't, trying to play chords with a nylon string guitar, it's quite difficult. And Dave called to the house, probably when we were about 16, maybe.
Yeah.
And he said, we needed 90 quid to buy a set of drums. He did, this is true. And so we got the money together, and then he went off, and he was just mad like this. And he just turned up. Then we had a drum kit, but we nothing else. We couldn't play the drums. We had no idea what to do whatsoever.
I love it. You didn't have a drummer. You just thought we better have drums.
Yeah, well, that's down to Dave, really. So we had a drum kit, and I had a nylon string guitar. He had a proper string guitar. He could play songs, So he was he would teach me chords and stuff like that, and I would just try to play along with him. So. Later on, that was a good idea, though, because we set the drum kit up in his front room, and we were just playing there, and we just hitting the bloody thing. And a drummer, Dave Clark, who was younger than us, walking by, heard and came in. And he could actually play the drums, and he could play the guitar better than me. He could play the guitar better than Dave. He could do solos. So it became my job to talk him into playing the drums.
Oh, what a story. What a story. Oh, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah, come on in. Help yourself. Sit down there. And then you both looked. Did you both look at each other and go, he's not leaving. He's not leaving. We're not letting this guy go.
But he we were kind of, he had been going around the neighborhood, so he actually came in and took over in a way,
Yeah.
His energy, he was really easygoing, and we were like, we didn't know what was going on,
Wow, what a find!
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Dave was the guy who actually went out and got us gigs, like before we could really play. Like he got us support gigs all around Dublin, and he was ringing different people, and all of a sudden he'd end up in the Bag It In or the Sportsman's Inn, playing to these bands, supporting these bands who had big crowds. Like, and we, you know, he'd some neck.
He's actually a professional. He's a great musician, Dave, the drummer. There was the three-piece. There was me, Dave, and Dave. Me and the two Daves.
Yeah.
And he plays now. He's with the Flowers, the Hothouse Flowers. He plays the drums. He's been there for about 30 years. And he's one of those guys that you can go. He'd go anywhere, and if there was a sitar, or if there was anything else hanging around the place, he'd be up after about an hour and he'd be playing it. You know, he's a natural musician.
So he left to go to the Hothouse Flowers.
He's the drums. He drums for the Flowers. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you say, "Don't go"? Don't leave me now. Yeah, that happened. Yeah, well, no, that's a story. I mean, actually, those finds are amazing. Those little stories of how things started. That drum kit, by the way, was that a good drum kit? Did you manage for £90? Did you manage to get a good drum kit, or was it one of those like? We had the first drum kit that we bought. Our drummer was one of those Ace kits. You don't know whether you remember sort of some of the music magazines, but they had like a page of Ace. There was an Ace guitar, Ace bass, and an Ace drum kit, and they were all about £100, and they were all pretty bad. But it got you started. Was it a good drum kit or?
No, I think I remembered it was blue, and he had it for quite a while.
Yeah,
and we were quite funny with it because as a three-piece, I remember when I was 17. Remember, I had a beard, Dave. I grew a beard.
Yeah, I've got
because
one.
I took the punk thing. I took the punk thing of being individual to a step too far, you know, and grew a beard. So we ended up playing, and we wouldn't let Dave have any toms. You remember our cymbals?
Yeah, we only wanted him to have the snare and the snare, the hi-hat, and the bass drum.
And we ended up supporting a punk band in the Magnet.
Theatre of Hate.
No, did we support them?
Yeah, we did. We supported
the Outcasts.
Don't argue, guys. Don't argue.
Yeah, it was Theatre of Hate in McGonagall's.
Oh my God! Did we do
that? There you go. And was that memorable, Shane?
Yeah. But yeah. So.
And what sort of music were you playing back then? Right at the beginning, what did that sound like?
We were, I suppose, I don't know if you'd say we were arrogant, but we didn't know how to play anyone else's songs, so we would play our own songs. Dave played the bass and sang. I played guitar, and Dave played the drums. And improvisation was what we did. So I remember, like, we would play a gig, and at the end of the song, Dave would just start playing a Public Image riff at the end. Like, we'd finish the song, he would just go dun 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 dun. We'd all just go, ooh, we just start playing again. So we were, we were about 18, and that's what we did, and we just jammed stuff through. Very heavily influenced by Public Image, Joy Division. Although I don't think we sounded like Joy Division, did we? Really, we didn't.
No. I'd say it was a kind of Pale was definitely one. And Joy Division, we were influenced by. The only problem that we had was we had melodies, and the music sounded really good, and discordant music, which is what I like, but we'd no lyrics. So the lyrics were the hardest thing, like, and they were kind of left to me. So we could do a gig, let's say in the Magnet Bar, and every song would be about snow. Do you know, because there was no words, like, and I mean real snow, not the other snow. Do you know, so. Snow falling, whatever. And it took years before I kind of got lyrics together. I think we did one song. We went in and did a demo. We did a demo of 3 or 4 songs, and one song particularly we had one chorus line in it. It was really a song called Julie Cries, and that was as close as we got to a really finished song. Do you know? It was years later before I was able to kind of cope with writing lyrics.
Yeah, so this was the first incarnation of Dave Long and Shane O'Neill, and I love the idea of writing songs about snow. Do you feel that everybody thought that was about something else?
I don't have a clue. Basically what we did was we'd have the melodies and the music all sorted, and then we go and do these gigs, and there was no real words, so you'd make them up, which I think was a kind of like I kind of learned a lot from it. You'd make lyrics up on the spot. Do you know, whatever came into your head, you'd sing about.
Do you know what? I've actually been there. I've actually been there myself, partially because I used to forget lyrics very easily.
Yeah.
But I've always had the ability to just make things up on the spot. So I'd have lyrics and they'd be written in, I'd have them written out nicely in my book, and then we'd practice them, etc. And then you get to a gig and you'd be halfway through a song and you go, can't remember the next verse. I'll just make this up.
Yeah, I remember that as well.
It's all right. I'm not famous yet. No one will know. Because it's only when you become really famous, isn't it? And everybody's bought your song. That's the only time that it really matters. You know, up until that point, you know, you could just say that every night is unique.
Exactly.
You know,
I think that looking back, though, we didn't even have the idea that that's what you would do. That's what a song was. It was just, I don't know. I suppose it seems a bit silly now, really, but
you were just having fun playing together.
Yeah, really, that's what it was.
Yeah.
You know?
It was the whole noise thing. Do you know, if the noise sounded good, just keep it going. And we didn't really think about finishing things, you know. It was kind of like jazz punk.
Yeah. Well, you were into your own sort of Frank Zappa moment there, where it just keeps going, you know, it gets quite experimental. Yeah. You suddenly look up at the audience and they're going like, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I can't imagine I don't know what we would have sounded like.
Well, it couldn't have been that
people
bad.
Did like it. Some people.
Well, I was going to say it could not have been that bad, gentlemen, because you're here now and you're still doing it. So, you know, you've made a career out of it, so that's not so bad. Now, obviously, that was then. Were there any kind of seminal things that you all listened to at the time?
Yeah, there was. I mean, there was one album that I don't know who actually bought it, and we made copies of it on cassette, and it was From the Lion's Mouth by The Sound. I remember myself, Dave, and Shane were really into it. From start to finish, we listened to it constantly, and whoever bought it, I don't know who bought it, we all made cassettes from it, so we all had a copy. But the funny thing is, I'm writing
this down. The Lion's Mouth.
From the Lion's Mouth by The Sound.
If you don't know, it's a great album.
Now, how we actually came to see them, I don't know if Shane would agree this, but there was an Old Grey Whistle test, and they had a night where they said these are the 3 up and coming bands in Britain, the 3 new up and coming bands, and the 3 bands were The Sound, From the Lion's Mouth, Echo and the Bunnymen, and U2. Now, when they were all on the show that night. Now, when we saw The Sound play New Dark Age, it just did something to me. It just blew me away. Adrian Bourne was playing this brilliant guitar, and it was just fantastic. It was right down our street. The funny thing is, years and years later, like now, I think that the songs are still brilliant, but I think I'm not mad on the sound of the actual album now. You know, I think they could have done it. I think it's something in it bothers me. Maybe it could be the keyboards, or there's something in it that bothers me, but it's a bit like
the production itself isn't quite right. Yeah,
I think they could have done with maybe somebody else maybe producing it, or taking a different take on it, you know. And that's, you know, but I feel the same about somebody like Nick Drake. Like, I can't listen to 5 Leaves Left because of the strings, whereas I love Pink Moon. I think Pink Moon is a classic record, but I think 5 Leaves Left would have been a classic record if he took the strings off, you know. But that's my humble opinion.
I think the Lion's Mouth album is great. I love that. I think later on, I mean, I know what you mean. There's big spaces then with these huge keyboards, down, you know, massive keyboards with kind of just, you know. But I love the bass and drums on. I love the way they powered through with the vocal, and I love his guitar. It's fantastic.
His guitar is amazing.
At the time, back then, you know, it would have been Echo and the Bunnymen, Heaven Up Here, The Sound.
Talk.
We weren't really. I mean, U2 are a great band, but we didn't really get them as much. You know, so to us, the other two bands were kind of cooler, really. You know,
it didn't resonate.
It's kind of funny how it turned out because they, you know, U2 became the real band, and they looked sort of. And I think that put pressure on those bands. I think it put pressure on Adrian Borland in the sound, and I think that's why he as he progressed on, his music became more. He tried to become pop. You know what I mean? And he lost that edge, and he became pop. And then all you get these synths, and it becomes very soft. And I think he did later on. He goes back again, you know. But the power that he had in the sound, the power of his songwriting, the kind of honesty that was in it, was what I really loved. You
did you ever together cover any of those songs from that album?
No, we. That's the funny thing is we were so.
That's next year's project.
Well, back then you just didn't learn other people's songs. I mean, I remember going back to the Flowers when they first came out, and you know, there was two were in the band called the Brazzini Brothers. You remember that? And they had a big, made a big, you know, they used to have big crowds here in Dublin playing, but they would just do cover versions and do whatever and do blues and just do, you know, and that was like a revelation to us in a way because we were from a generation before that you just played your own music, you know, you didn't do that at all, you know. So, and even after that, like,
it's always surprised me, or it's always interested me because, you know, I never really understood that. I lived in a house for a while with an ABBA covers band, and I'll tell you what, you don't want to do that. As much as I love some ABBA, you know, you don't want to live in a house with a covers band because they just practice the same songs over and over again. And you know, and also it's a little bit disturbing when you walk down for breakfast in the morning and there's Bjorn, you know, cooking eggs. It's just not right. But you know, for me, I never really got it. I mean, I think we learned when I was in the band, I think we learned one or two covers, but even then they weren't covers of things that most people would know. They were things that we really liked as songs, but no one would actually know because it's probably safer actually, because otherwise people would say, well, that didn't sound like it. But for me, picking up an instrument was all about just writing something. So I was never interested in learning other people's music.
Yeah,
that's what Dave said, making a racket. It's hard to make a racket sound like, if you know what it's supposed to sound like, it's a lot harder to do it. Whereas if you're writing it yourself, you can just you can change it as you go along. You know?
So were there any family influences on either of you two in terms of music? I mean, did you grow up in musical houses, or were you know, the only ones? Were you the odd people in your house?
Well, my dad was into traditional music really, and so that, you know, there was no crossover really in those terms. Even he didn't really have there was no classic records, Rolling Stones or any of those stuff either in our house. I don't think there was in yours either, Dave.
No, there wasn't. I mean, I suppose Gilbert O'Sullivan was one of them. Do you know?
Yeah,
that was on the old 8-track thing in the car. You know,
Leo Sayer, what my dad was into, like, you know. So
yeah.
When I need love. Yeah, and that was it. Yeah.
And the radio, I suppose, you know.
And the radio. So that tells me something. So when you were starting to make this music, was that in a way slightly difficult in terms of showing that to the family, etc.? Because would they have understood it at all?
Well, to be quite honest, I never involved the family in music at all. Really, you know, it was a separate. To me, it was a separate thing. The only time they'd get involved is if I wanted to get the room to get everyone up to play music in. You know,
so Shane and David became your family, really, in that respect.
Well, yeah, like all team, you know, that's what happens, doesn't it? In a band, it becomes all. I mean, we would practice. I mean, thinking about it, we would practice in our garage in our front room.
Yeah.
So our neighbors, I mean, my God, we didn't think about that, did we, Dave? We just wanted to play.
Yeah.
And I mean, the racket we must have been making, you know.
For God's sake,
we come from Dundrum Churchtown, which is like a suburban semi-detached, estates, and I mean, there's no escaping it. I mean, I'm sure as you come up the road, you would have heard, "Oh my God, what's that noise?"
Yeah, it goes right through the walls, like.
It goes right through the walls. And they allowed us. They allowed us to do it. So, and then, no, don't think any neighbors ever complained. Even I don't think.
No, I'm sure they weren't happy about it, but they didn't complain. They just went, "Oh my God, here they are again."
But we do it during the day. It wouldn't be like at night or anything. You know?
Yeah.
No.
Now you've got really busy in the last couple of years. Your output is, you're starting to put the stuff out there. Was that just because it was the right time to do that? I mean, how much has everything going online now, and the fact that you can just produce this stuff with digital equipment, the cost of recording's gone down? How much has all that influenced your noise making?
It's huge. That's a huge element of it.
Yeah.
Be able to, I mean, that was always a dream back, although you probably didn't even think about it in those terms, but to be able to just control every aspect of it, and not be reliant on, having to pay out to go into a studio or having stuff mastered. And there was so many, elements in the way.
Yeah.
I haven't been playing music for decades. I put out other records. I was doing stuff. Dave, I think you came back before. You were playing stuff and putting out stuff, and I can't remember exactly the way it went, but there was a couple of tracks that Dave had done lyrically that just affected me in the sense that there's no one else that does. Like there's a track on the album called Albert the Painter, which is based on a short story by Herman Hesse, the painter. Mm. And the funny thing about the short story is it's about a painter who becomes disillusioned with painting and realizes he realizes that the question of what am I doing this for when I could be sitting out having a glass of wine and just not doing anything, that question became bigger than the desire to paint. So he just stopped painting. But then later on, he just starts painting again. I can't remember the whole thing, but he just starts painting again. He paints on cardboard, basically. And he just does it for his own thing, and he doesn't care what anyone else says. And the story kind of evolves that he moves away. People find his paintings. He comes back to see what they're all talking about. And he realizes that what he was actually painting, they get something totally different from, It's a kind of meandering story. But there was kind of a weird echo.
I was going to say, this is the story of David and Shane.
Yeah, in a weird way, and Dave has lines in it like, he spits into the fire, and just weird lines about like him painting. He's putting up his paint, his eyes are dry, and he's painting on cardboard found on empty houses, and just very, very strange lines that kind of brought me back to that Echo and the Bunnymen, to the sound. Like if you think that U2 moved everything very rocky. Back then, like we loved Magazine. I don't know if you know Magazine, right?
Yeah.
So, they're in a corner on their own. You know what I mean? And those bands don't really kind of exist anymore. You don't. Like, you need to be within, you need to have a certain hat, we know those kind of hats you need to wear, the leather, you need to be fitting into that thing. And these lyrics are totally, completely out from that. They're strange, I mean, I suppose if I was playing into my mother, now you're asked about family, it's almost now because they're so strange that I feel I'd have to explain them to them. But that's what I liked about the lyrics. That's what I liked. It reminded me of going back. And Dave said to me, he mentioned the guitar, the style we used to play. I used to have an electroharmonics kind of a chorus pedally thing, like a big metal kind of a thing. And I don't know, just the idea of playing single notes, rather than complicated chords, rather than bar chords, you just playing a line, down, a melody line on the guitar and two strings maybe against one bass line. And Magazine, absolutely, yeah. So I don't know. It kind of captured. There's a vague feeling of listening to John Peel late at night and just hearing some mad bloody band from Germany that's just all percussion and noise and just that kind of excitement of something different. And that's how I ended up getting back into it.
Do you know what I love about your music, guys? And I'm going to be completely honest here. If I listened to your music and I hadn't seen your faces, I would have thought this is a couple of 21-year-olds making a really amazing record. And how on earth are they making this record at 21? There's now
that's really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
What I mean by that is you can hear that you've mastered what you do, which is only something that takes time, right?
Yeah,
that isn't something that young bands, especially bands that play stuff with noise, etc., often play too much of one thing. And certainly in terms of the way that things are composed and put together, there's either too much drum or there's too much guitar or but there's a lovely balance in everything that's on the latest single, etc.
Well,
on latest EP.
Yeah, you see, the thing about it is that there was so much work put into this, really, but it was fun work, if you know what I mean. I mean, we thought about so many things. There was different kind of edits on it, and different, verses changed into choruses changed into verses, lyrics were changed up to the last minute. It was like there was a lot of thought. Actually, somebody just came on there and said he loves magazine, Shop at Both Sides.
Yeah, there he is.
We actually did, Jim Wolfe. Yeah, we did a cover of Shop by Both Sides on a B-side years ago. Magazine were a brilliant band, like all those bands from, like you got Magazine, what's the other, Magazine, Joy Division, Echo and the Bunnymen's first two albums. There's so many good bands,
There's weird bands. I don't know if you knew the Chameleons.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I still have, there's a song, they do a weird song, and I just listened to it again about a few months ago. And there's actually, the reason why the song sounds so strange is because there's a key change just before, as it goes into the chorus. And I mean, you could only do that through jamming. They had to jam that. They jammed that out, and that's how we would write. We would just do something in the room and then remember it. You know what I mean? Or we say, we did that bit, and we might do it 3 or 4 times to remember. Oh, what's that? Do that again and again till you remember it. But we wouldn't. We never taped it or anything like that, did we? We just we just went with the vibe of it,
But your vocals are so great on this. They're really, really great, and I think you sound fresh, and that's why I say I think it sounds like a young band doing something. And you wouldn't know. You honestly wouldn't know. So maybe that's a thing you should do, is just put a couple of young lads on the front.
I'm sure
I have no problem with that.
I have no problem with that either. Instead of two grizzly people in their 50s here.
Look, if it was good enough for Milli Vanilli,
a much maligned act.
Yeah. There's that whole thing from the 80s where nobody actually sang on their own song, wasn't there? So I mean, it's you could kind of go back to that. No, but seriously, it's brilliant. I mean, and I heard other things in there as well. As you say, certainly with the second song on the EP, that the bass and everything. I mean, yes, I can hear sort of the sort of New Order, Joy Division type influence on that, and the bands that have followed that. I heard a little bit of sort of Husker Du kind of Sugar on there as well.
Right,
on this EP. Yeah. I mean,
that'd be more Dave than me. I kind of liked them, but I never really got into them. You did though, didn't you?
Yeah, they did a great song called I'm sure it's them. It's called Hardly Getting Over It by Husker Du. It's a brilliant song. I don't know too much of them, but I know the album you're talking about, the Sugar. That was the one that kind of that they kind of got a bit bigger after that record. It was more well produced. I like the kind of earlier stuff, you know,
earlier stuff where it was a bit more.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know what it is. I'm just kind of more into that kind of discordant music, or like for instance, at the moment I'm listening to Flowers of Romance by Public Image, which half the album doesn't have. It seemed to pass me by at the time. I remember seeing the single Flowers of Romance, and he was wearing the vicar's kind of thing on the top of the pops. And I always loved the Flowers of Romance song, but for some reason the album kind of passed me by. So I've been listening to it recently, and I realized there's no bass on it apart from maybe three tracks, because it was just Keith Levine and Lydon and the drummer Atkins in the studio. But by God, it's a brilliant record, but it's really discordant. But if I played it to other people, they'd probably go, that's insane, turn it off. But that's the kind of music that excites me. Do you know? I don't know why.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, in the first ever one of these shows that I did, where I was speaking to Fred Bong, I mentioned an album to him that I was given when I was 11 years old, which was a Pierre Ubu album.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And at the time, I just couldn't listen to it. What I mean I couldn't listen to it is because my ears were just not accustomed to that. But there was something about it that was also mesmerizing. I just wanted to be able to listen to it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, is that the same for you? I mean, is that
that's
great
a great
music
thing.
for you?
Whoever gave you that record, I was just thinking, whoever gave you that record did you such a great favor, and that you're kind of getting around. I mean, it's not all equal, but that's what I'm trying to say about some of Dave's lyrics. It's that space whereby you don't know. I mean, I'm probably a bit more traditional, so it kind of worked out. Like I was kind of pushing songs maybe in one direction. So quite often what happened was we would take the mixes past where we were supposed to go. But it was always Dave who would say, you know, no, you know, I prefer this mix.
Yeah.
So I'd have to learn to remember to keep the mixes, you know, back, you know, because you could sort of get too much. So that's what I thought you were getting at when you were saying it sounded young, that in the sense that Dave doesn't want the stuff too polished. You know what I mean? There has to be that edge in it, even though we're kind of, I mean, we're not really discordant. I mean, we're quite easy listening in a sense, I feel anyway, you know, but we don't, you know, fill in all the cracks. You didn't leave it like
exactly.
Sort of,
and I think that's why it does sound young. It sounds like it because, you know, with all due respect, I think people think when you get to a certain point in life, and I'm older than I look, that you just go down the mild road, you know, and that you know, let's go for the path of least resistance. But this sounds like your music still is sounding, and the stuff that you're producing now sounds like those guys that were in that.
Yeah, I think we're trying to get into that space.
Yeah, that
trying to get into that
original room with that drum machine. Drum kit, yeah.
The blue drum kit.
Yeah. So that excitement is still there, which is great, because that's what, you know, that's what makes music really, really interesting to the listener. And I just hope a lot of people listen to it, because it's really great stuff that you've produced here. So what comes next? There's an EP out at the moment, which is called Far From Home. Is there an album that follows this, or? Yeah,
there's another EP coming out, which I don't know if I'm putting lumping Dave into it here, but he definitely thinks it's a kind of a summer song. I remember we used to be you would think when you're starting out, you think you've got a single, or you think you've got a pop song.
Yeah.
It's nothing like a pop song. You know, it's your weird version of it. So we have one of those now, which is great. Sort of kind of reminds me of all the same kind of feelings. I mean, I do think it's a pop song, but I'm absolutely ready for everyone else to go, no, that's not a pop song.
It's the middle of winter song, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I would do, I'd actually call it. It's a song called "Dreams Come." And it's going to have two other tracks on it. One called "Meet Me on Another Day," and "You're Always on Your Own." So it's three brand new tracks. But I would call it a kind of post-COVID uplifting piece of summer music. For the, you know, that's what I think. Apart from the third track, you know, so that's next on the.
Well,
And then there'll be an album. There's a full album then.
Yeah.
In which, you know, we don't want any of the. We were also watching other bands put out stuff on Bandcamp, and it became a thing for me that the bands would put out an album, but before they put a single, 2 maybe singles, with no B-sides, no nothing, and then expect the fans to buy an album, and they've already bought 2 or 3 of the tracks off it. And I come from, again, this going back to this old school, this old kind of idea. You know, I've always loved EPs. I love the idea of 4 tracks, you know, spiral, scratch, all these kind of things, you know, and you don't know what you're getting. And then you end up loving the 4th track that no one else knows from the, you know, so that kind of mystique is really what we like. So that's why we kind of said, so all the B-sides, if you like, the 2 tracks, extra tracks, they won't be on the album, and they won't be done again. They'll be put out like that, and that's just what they're gone then at that point. But the 2 main tracks will be on the album, and we're quite proud of the album. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this, to be honest. It came out in some weird way. I mean, David said to me a couple of times how we finished it. It was kind of finished in a blur. We just wanted to do it. I don't know why. I can't remember, but it was some tracks then just came in at the end. Do you remember, like Finnegan and stuff just came in at the end, and we just went with it, and then, you know, so there's a slight feeling of, wow, we should really make an effort here. We should do something with it. We shouldn't just let it lie. We should push it. So we're really quite proud of the album. I think there's 3 tracks that Dave's lyrics really make the difference. You know, I think that all the album is great. I love it. All the music is great. But then on top of that, there's 3 tracks with really the lyrics for me are something that, you know, I'm really happy to be involved with something with, you know, it fulfills me in some weird way, you know. Again, going back to that Peru feeling of just trying to touch that space, trying to do something to shake it up. Not like, you know, I don't know, not like trying to get a radio song, not trying to do anything else, it's just exciting, you know, to be able to make a noise like that, you know.
You 2 have completely sold it to me today. I now want to hear this, which is great. So you've done your job perfectly. Well done for turning up and doing your job. Because no, seriously, I'm having heard what I've heard, and having heard you just talk about it in such an impassioned way, I really want to hear it, because and I want to hear that.
Maybe we should stop now then.
Yeah, I really want to hear that blue drum kit. No, but it's, you know, I think it's great where you're going with this, guys, and you know, and I hope people come out and support you. It's a weird time for music. The one great piece of thing that I can say to you, David, is luckily nobody's got a clue what time of year it is anymore because of lockdowns and things. So your summer song can be a summer song.
Brilliant. Thank you.
because nobody knows whether it's summer or not. We've all completely forgotten. The seasons have just blurred. So just put it out, and then if people go, well, actually, that's an autumn song, you go, yeah, it's autumn now.
Exactly. Sorry, can I just ask you, what was the name of your band that you were in?
I was in a band called The Colourful People, which is a great name, isn't it?
It is nice.
Yeah.
Did you release stuff?
We recorded an album, and then the solicitors sat on it.
Oh, good God.
That must have been good.
It's the story of many a band from that era. So this was early 90s.
Right.
Yeah. Well, we won't go there, but it was, no, we did all the hard work, and then and then people took it away from us.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Hopefully someday it'll come out.
Well, I'm slowly but surely getting coerced into writing stuff again, mainly with all of the guests that I have on these shows. So who knows? Shane David, you could be, on one of the tracks as it happens. I think it would be great. Suddenly have a show that births all of this weird music from lots of different people from all over the globe. I mean, it'd be marvelous. I can't say that I write in a very traditional way either. So it'd probably be right up your street, to be honest. Oh, dear.
That's all good references, I mean, it's funny when you think back to some of those bands, and maybe I'm just old, and I don't get it anymore. But I mean, even bands like Perubu, like the modern equivalent of those bands, all seem to be so leather jacketed out and all sort of cooled out, and they just seem to all. It doesn't seem, you know what I mean? There's probably that's what it is actually. That social media gives you such access that mystery is not there anymore.
I think it's quite hard, especially for young musicians coming in now I mean, because the trouble is, about the perception of what you need to do in terms of social, about this thing, about social media, and about, the way to carve anything is that you've got to do an image, and you've got to perceive something, you've got to show something to someone or whatever, I'd wonder how many bands just happen as organically as they used to, whereby, we're a bunch of guys that met and got on together and started making a noise together, and it was just fun. And as you say, you do gigs. I think back to my first band. We used to just go do gigs, and we didn't even know what it was about. I think there's more knowledge of the business now, and a lot of youngsters learn the business and what they need to do and how to perform and all of these things, rather than just having fun with it.
And then the idea of making art seems to come out of it sometimes too. When I don't know, it doesn't seem to be as deep, or
Yeah, maybe. But
there's a space to play into now. As kind of, I suppose. When you were talking, I was thinking that what I said was bullshit, really, because I've started because people play you on their show, so you end up listening to the show, and now I'm hearing all these odd bands. I don't know who they are, and they excite me. Not every track, but invariably I'm listening to some new. I remember that we listened to that. You listened to that show from San Francisco as well. The guy was playing. He plays 50s and before music, and just such odd stuff that I hadn't really heard. You're going into Hawaiian sort of invocations, and then some old jazz thing and stuff like that. So I suppose it is out there. I've just been lazy. I need to.
No, look, there's plenty of good new music. I had a young band on here yesterday, and they were a fantastic band with real difference, and quite a nice story as well. A couple of brothers that basically their band grew up because the two of them were competing against each other to be the better one at an instrument, and then the other one learnt an instrument and whatever. And I like the story of how it developed. It was quite natural in a way. So yeah, I think there's great music out there still today, but I think we live in a different way that it reached out. I think bands nowadays, they have this platform, they can get onto this platform, and there's a way out. We used to photocopy bits of paper and stick them up on church halls, and then go and get a key to the church hall and set up your amps in there, and then invite your friends and family to come along and see you. And they all sat there and go, and he went, "That was great." Nobody got it. I really enjoyed that. If more people could come and not get it next week, that would be even better. And it was fun. It was fun. So listen, Shane, David, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Great, thank you.
So yeah, do we know when the next EP is out? Is that a set date for that?
August the 13th.
August the 13th. Oh, I've got so long to wait.
And then the album is the 10th of September.
September?
Yeah, 10th of September.
Oh, just in time for my birthday. Marvelous. Okay, well, I know what I'm getting for my birthday then this year. Okay, that's good. David, Shane, thank you very much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Graham. It's
Cheers.
great fun.
Thanks,
Bye.
Graham. See you. Bye-bye.